Hey guys, it's Heyde, and today I'm talking about Orange Tree's Evolution Roundwound bass. Now, if you saw my video a few weeks ago, I talked about their flatwound bass, and the interface is very similar, so I won't get too far into the interface, but I thought today I'd talk more about the cue itself, a piece I wrote called Wrath of Ra, which is kind of progressive metal, and it features the roundwound bass quite a bit. So, just briefly looking at the interface, you'll see it's pretty much the same as the flatwound and the other Orange Tree guitar packs. We have play, which has all of our mappable parameters here. We have tone, which has some great built-in effects such as tremolo, EQ, compression, reverb. And then we have setup, which gives us some additional parameters that we can control, like double tracking, the volume of the fret slides. We have humanization effects, picking effects, that sort of thing. So just to give you a little preview of how this sounds, I'll play this riff here, which is really the genesis of the whole piece. Now you'll see they have a lot of different presets, I think even more than the flatwound, huge array. So to pick it, I just kind of scrolled through till I found something that fit, and I really didn't do too much tweaking with it, just a little bit of EQing here to kind of get out of the way of the kick drum, and then to add a little bit of high end. That was it. So here is this riff, just the bass alone. Nice and powerful, compression sounds really good, really didn't require too much tweaking. I actually played all of this in real time. Now, to double this, I used Orange Tree's Evolution Rock Standard, also a really great VST kit, and I used their Better Shredder, which I believe is double tracked, yes. So together these two sound like this. Nice. Now you hear a little bit of extra effects going on. Those are all built in with the Rock Standard, so a little bit of reverb on those. Then to double it even more, because we can't have enough power, I added a synth fuzz lead. And then lastly, we have our drum kit kind of playing a Rage Against the Machine halftime kind of vibe. Now for the next section, I wanted to get a little bit more progressive with it. So what I incorporated were some more synth patches. We have an arpeggiated synth that I wound up bouncing just for convenience. Really just laying a pad down. Pretty much just a standard Logic sound with a couple extra effects added in, like tape saturation and stuff. Then we've also got another doubling of the bass, a little bit more of a gritty 8-bit kind of sound. And lastly, we have like this kind of sitar synth playing this melodic pattern. I panned some of the sounds on the left and some on the right just to give it a little bit of stereo spread and color. Now the drums pick it up a little bit with some more kind of hi-hat driven stuff. And the guitar and bass here are actually doubling the synth bass pulse. The guitar is palm muted to give it a really short sound, and the bass is just sustained but played short. Now for the next part, I have the guitar open up a little bit, so we have some of those notes are then opened up. We have a couple extra little bends just to give it some grit. And we introduce a lead guitar in here, which is another part of the Rock Standard. This is the Dusty Road snapshot that they've got. And you'll see the Rock Standard also has a ton of different sounds. Really nice because you can just kind of sift right through, find what you're looking for, and tweak from there. I did a little bit more equalization and stuff on this, because I wanted to give the bass and the rhythm guitar a lot more room in the lower register. So I cut out a lot of the lows on this lead. So altogether that sounds like this. Now for the next part, I wanted to open up even more. So the bass and guitar are pretty much doing the same thing, a couple change of notes. The drums start to add in a full snare. Before they were playing cross stick, so the full snare just gives it an extra punch. And we introduce one more little subtle touch in here, kind of this off-kilter rhythm that doesn't quite line up with the 4, but it gives it an extra kind of just bubbling texture. So let's hear that all together. All right, so now we're in our next section here. The drums have been playing really open sounding patterns with the ride cymbal, the crash cymbal. So to close it up a little bit and allow some room for what's going to be the bass solo, I had the drums revert over to just the hi-hat alone with some extra punches in between the bass riff. So now the synth pulse was pretty hard to hear before. Now you'll see I've kind of amped up the volume a little bit so it's featured against the bass solo. So before we show the bass solo, I'm going to play just the drum kit, the synth pulse on their own, and let's just keep this arpeggiated synth in here too. Cool. So against that, which is kind of a shorter texture, there's some room for this bass because we've had all these bass instruments drop out. So what I've done here is I've divided up the bass into various articulations. Now, in the Orange Tree interface, you can actually do that here in play. You could map by velocity, but just to have a little bit more control, this is just my personal preference, I've mapped them out separately. So I wanted a slap bass solo in the metal setting. So what I've got here is the slap sustains, I've got slap muted, and I've got bass slides. Now this is a really, really cool patch that they've included with this one. As I play different notes on the keyboard, here I'll open this up so you can see it. As I play different notes, you'll see it's going to get this slide effect based on how far I'm playing chromatically. So if I play one note, it's just gonna sound like the normal bass, but as I play up chromatically, they've managed to create this patch where it's got this great slide effect. So I can go, and what I used that for primarily on this was almost kind of like a fret slide effect. I wanted some control. So it's very, very subtle in here, but you will hear it. So here are the sustains on their own. Here's the muted sound, so you can hear that on its own. And here's the slide on its own. Now that may not sound like a great bass solo separately, but altogether we've got this. Now the way I actually did this is I played the bass solo in on one patch, then I decided which articulations I wanted for each note, and then I separated them out. So it was really a matter of copy pasting, and then you'll see here I've got those different spots muted depending on where I want them to sound and where I don't. So if we go like this, you'll see anything that's muted here is the exact reverse over here, unmuted. So altogether, it sounds like this. Okay, now we get to our end of the piece, the kind of final thing. We've got the lead guitar to come back in to contrast the bass. We've got a solid drum groove going on, and we have most of the synths kind of just riffing on a pedal point E, which sounds like this. Okay, now for that little bass slide you heard in there, what I did was I used one of their standard sounds. On the top end of their basses, they've got some of these patches. Now, I used one of those bass slides, but because it was too long, I actually bounced it out and then just time stretched it here so it matched the length that I needed it to be. So it sounds like this. And to kind of fake the top end note, I actually included it in here. So as it blends, you can kind of hear that it almost slides up to a note and then back down. So I'll play it in context, and then I'll move forward, and you'll hear in the ending, we just open up the drums a little bit more. We've got a couple more doublings coming in with these synths. We've got an octave added up on the top, the lead guitar. That was actually my girlfriend's idea to add that in there as I showed her the piece. She's like, you could use the extra octave. I'm like, yeah, you're right. And we've got that doubled with those kind of Egyptian sounding synths. So all together, it sounds like this. And there you have it. That is Wrath of Ra. Had so much fun writing this cue. I don't usually write music like this, but with Orange Tree Samples VSTs, it's always just so much fun to write this kind of music. They're so intuitive. I love just playing around with the snapshots and then just tweaking from there. And they've been adding more and more patches, just more and more stuff. I notice new things every time they send a new one my way. These grace note things, these buzz trills, lots and lots of specific, carefully tailored articulations, so you can really get whatever you're looking for with these instruments. So hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions for me, leave them in the comments section, and I'll see you in the next video.